So this may have been the toughest top 5 list that I've ever had to do. And I've done top 5 lists from MCU movies, movies of the year, countless top 5s I've done, but none might have been tougher than top 5 movie sequels. I thought, in the spirit of the new Scream movie coming out, why not do sequels? So I've got an awesome panel with me this week to discuss top 5 movie sequels. First up, we have my co-host on the Nerd Cave Retro podcast and co-writer of the award-winning short film Monsters Anonymous, Mr. Jason Robbins. How are you, my friend?
I am good. How are you?
Fantastic. Also joining us, the other co-writer of Monsters Anonymous, award-winning comedy writer himself, Mr. Wally Phelps. How are you, sir?
I am doing very well, thank you.
Fantastic. And joining us, if you listen to Nerd Cave Retro, you hear him every year on our Halloween podcast, former professional wrestler, Mr. Joey Image. How are you, sir?
Hey, guys. How are you? Thanks for having me, man. Again.
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to this conversation since we set it up, seems like a week ago, maybe a little bit more than that. We kind of talked about doing this. I know I've wanted to do this top 5 list for a while. And
Dude, I have not a sweat a top 5 list like I have this one, honestly.
My list changed. We're recording this on Sunday. It changed twice today.
Yeah,
mine's going to change as we speak.
I was just gonna say I'm changing mine around right now.
Live updates. I love it.
I have a question at the top of the show.
Okay.
So are we including, because we have talked about this before, like what constitutes a sequel. So if you're looking at a movie, say a trilogy, do you consider those the middle and the end to be sequels or part of one story? Do we consider those to be sequels? Because that's going to inform my number 1.
I consider them sequels.
Okay, so that changes things for me here.
There's change number 1.
Yes.
As we go live on the show. So what we're going to do is we're going to just go around the table, if you will. We're going to start with Jason. He's going to list his number 5. Joey is going to list his 5. Wally's going to say his number 5, and then I'm going to end it with my number 5. And go on until we're finished, and then we'll read the list that you, the viewers and listeners, sent on Facebook. I believe we got 10 total lists that were submitted, so quite a few to go through. So, Jason,
and we're going to do the honorable mentions afterwards, right?
Yep. We'll do afterwards. We'll do honorable mentions because I've got a lot of them. I think I've got like 6 or 7 honorable mentions.
I got like 5.
Yeah, I got 4 myself.
All right, so Jason, kick us off with your number 5.
All right, at my number 5, I have The Dark Knight, the second in the Christopher Nolan Bat trilogy, and quite possibly, and the way I look at these sequels, the sequels that I picked, these are all movies that not necessarily had a weak first movie, but had a great first movie, but then the second one came out and was even better than the first, and also elevated the first one to a higher status because of how good it was. And I feel like The Dark Knight was that type of movie, to where Batman Begins was a great movie, but when you look at that trilogy as a whole, The Dark Knight actually holds up the first and the last movie even more because of how good that movie actually is.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think when you look at modern sequels, The Dark Knight has set the standard for all of them.
Yeah, it definitely, like that. It's set a bar so high that it's very hard afterwards to come up with a sequel that's as good for a trilogy or whatever. But it's damn near a perfect comic book movie, in my opinion.
It's one of the very few comic book movies to me that also transcends its genre.
Yeah,
you can look at it as a very good crime espionage type film, just with Batman.
Yeah, and it stands up on its own as well. Like, you don't even need to have seen Batman Begins to appreciate The Dark Knight, because, like you said, it transcends its genre. Like, it's a crime thriller. It's basically Heat with Batman as the lead. Like, Batman's incidental in this movie. Like, there's so much story happening in this movie that Batman is just kind of like an afterthought. Like he's not even really the main focus of the movie.
That's not a very good way to say that this is a great Batman movie.
Well, it's really the Joker's movie, honestly. It is. I mean, it's the Joker's movie. He beats Batman in the movie. He wins.
I mean, technically you're right. But the Joker can never win. I can't do the Batman voice. I'm not even going to attempt to do it.
You can't kill me.
Yeah.
We're destined to do this forever.
Joey, what about you? What's your number 5?
I just put these in order now. I didn't even think about that. But my number 5 is Karate Kid 3.
Ooh.
Terry Silver, baby.
I love the third one. I like the first one. I like the second one. I love the third one. The third one is like, Terry Silver is my favorite heel bad guy in American cinema. I mean, I love that dude. I was so excited when they teased him at the end of Cobra Kai 3, season 3, and I was like speculating, like, holy crap, Terry Silver's going to show up, blah, blah, blah. And then people online were like, no, it's not going to be him. It's going to be that Mike Barnes guy. I'm like, no, don't ruin this for me. And then, spoiler alert, I mean, it's been out for 3 weeks now, so if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry, but the first person we see in the first frame is, well, we only see the back of him, but it's Terry Silver. I'm like, this is amazing. I love that guy. I love the fact, again, since I've been wrestling-wise, I was a heel almost my entire career, minus 1 year. Seeing Daniel LaRusso go from the biggest baby in the world, the baby face, to the biggest heel in the movie, right next, like Terry Silver's right-hand man for a while, and not know it. Like the mental manipulation aspect of that script was brilliant. I love that. That's my favorite Karate Kid movie. Out of all the movies that are not called The Next Karate Kid.
Of all the movies that I did not expect to end up on this list was a Karate Kid movie. Like Joey's starting off with the dark horse, man.
I love it.
Hell yeah. I very much enjoy this.
Yeah, I mean, Karate Kid 3 gets a lot of hate, but to me, Terry Silver carries that entire movie. Like, I love his wacky, like, over-the-top evilness, and they even do a great job of explaining it in Cobra Kai. So I'm right there with you, Joey. Like, I know we're both big Terry Silver fans.
Yeah, I was, again, I mean, sorry if this is a spoiler, but they referenced Halloween. I almost said Halloween 3. They referenced Karate Kid 3 and Cobra Kai, and I didn't remember if they said this in the movie or not, but in the series, and when he was talking to John Kreese, and he's like, dude, I was so coked up back then, I didn't know what was going on. And I was like, wow, like that kind of explains a lot of the movie now, but I don't remember if they actually said that in the movie or if they implied it or something. Somebody
implied.
Yeah, somebody tweeted to me and said, I think it was implied that that's what he was doing when he was in his pool before, like, the phone. There's a scene where he's in his jacuzzi and the phone rings. And I forget who it was that I was talking to on Twitter about it, but it was like, I feel like that was implied that he was like leaning over, doing a line of blow, and then the phone rings, and then they say it in the series. And I'm like, that's insane. Like, I don't remember that, but that was a huge, like, when he said that in the series, I'm like, oh my God, so much more stuff just is clear now.
It makes so much sense now.
Right. Like, how did he's just this big prick? And then it's like, okay, I get it. And he's screaming and yelling, like celebrating on the phone, but like at the top of his lungs, like, dude, relax. I get it. But like,
he was standing in the sauna wearing nothing but a towel, and he's on the phone just screaming into it.
I'm like, relax.
Screaming about how they're going to screw over this kid.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Halloween 3. You mentioned Halloween 3. I did want to throw out there that Halloween 3 is not on my list because A, I consider it to be a standalone movie. 2, I don't want to have to defend myself on Twitter for 2 weeks after this drop. So.
I very much expected that to be on your list, and I wish the creators of it thought of it as a standalone movie as well.
Wally, what's your number 5?
Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
Oh, why did I not think of that? Like I said, this list was so hard.
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure was one of my favorite movies as a 10-year-old. And when Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey came out, it seemed bigger and brighter and funnier. And it had a lot of things in it that were to my interests, like them dying and coming back as ghosts, and the whole seance where they were, trying to scare everybody into doing what they need to be done. And then, everything just was bonkers in that movie in such a delightful way. And William Sadler joining the cast as Death was one of the most brilliant performances in a comedy of all time. I still quote, "Don't overlook my butt. Reaping burns many calories." It's just so much fun to watch. And, of course, it has Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter, who are both fantastically likable people in real life, as even when you look at who they are as people. But then, you turn down how smart they are, and suddenly you have Bill and Ted, and it's hilarious. And I love it.
And one of the greatest soundtracks of all time.
Oh,
too.
Absolutely. I still rock that soundtrack occasionally.
I have it on CD because it's not streamable anywhere. You can stream the separate songs, but a lot of them aren't even streamable.
Everybody's individual albums, but it's like you have to build. Like, somebody has a playlist that I listen to, and it's a lot. I love it. It's got like Primus's Tommy the Cat on there, and that's the first time I ever heard of Primus. With them, say, "Baby, do you want to lay down by me?" And just like, "Oh, this is great." Say, baby, I love that movie so much. And occasionally I'll just pull out the random station.
Yeah.
But it has to be with certain company who I know have seen that movie.
So we need to do a feature presentation special of top 5 movie soundtracks at some point.
Ooh, that's a good idea. I like that a lot.
And we need to do Nerd Cave Retro top 5 video game sequels as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That's a great idea.
I only know like 3 or 4 soundtracks, so I'm
Link to the Legend of Zelda 2. Link's Adventure of Link is not going to make that list anyway.
Bottom 5, maybe.
Yeah.
I had a feeling Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey would be on either Wally or Jason's list, so
I didn't think of that
good to see it this early. But my number 5 is Rocky 2, and it's a movie that I have appreciated more as I've gotten older. Because I can remember watching the Rocky movies on VHS at my grandparents' house.
That's in my honorable mentions. Yeah.
What I like about it is that Rocky achieved his goal at the end of the first movie where he went the distance with Apollo Creed. But you felt like you saw the next step in the growth of his character where he married Adrian and he, had a kid. So he was fighting for more than himself. So you became more invested in him as he trained for the rematch with Apollo. And I think the fight itself between Rocky and Apollo was better in this one than in the original. So it's also my favorite Rocky movie.
I feel like during the 80s, Rocky 2 was sort of like the forgotten sequel, because by the time you got to 3, of course, you had you had Mr. T, who was just a pop culture hurricane. Then you had Rocky 4, which like even to this day is like, you ask people what their favorite Rocky movie is, probably 8 out of 10 people are going to say Rocky 4. Those movies were so huge. But now the farther we get away from it, Rocky 1 and 2, 2 is the better sequel, while 3 and 4 and especially 5 just don't really age well at all.
5 was just.
Yeah, 5's bad.
5 is my Halloween 3 of the Rocky series.
We don't speak of Rocky 5 in this.
Rocky 5? What's that?
Neither does Stallone. That's why he wanted to make another one.
Yeah.
A few weeks back, I went back and watched all of the Rocky movies, including Creed 1 and 2, which are both
I've never
really
seen
good.
either one of them. I haven't seen either of those yet.
Creed 1 is very good, is extremely good. 2 is okay. but 1 is just, it's one of the best Rocky movies. If you put it in that universe, it's probably top 3 or 4 in my opinion. But
I don't remember who it was, Wally. Maybe you could help me. There's a local comedian here who has a bit about his car got broken into, and he had the Rocky, the whole Rocky box set back in the 90s. I
can't remember who it is.
They broke into his car and they stole Rocky 1 through 4 and left 5 in the back seat.
I've heard of that.
I don't remember who it was, but that's one of my favorite bits. Like, it's so funny and true. It's a true story too. It's not a joke. It's an actual true story.
Was it Crankus?
I think it was. I'm gonna have to ask him if that was him next time I see him.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting to, was after watching all of them, 5 is still just as bad as you remember. So I don't blame him for leaving it.
That reminds me of when I actually let someone borrow the Star Wars Holiday Special, and when they came to bring it back to me, I told them no thanks.
It's yours now.
Yeah.
You have to pass it along like the ring.
It's like a curse.
Jason, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is going to be Evil Dead 2. You talk about
my honorable
movie,
mentions.
Talk about a movie that
was my number 1. So
not necessarily. I wouldn't say it's a sequel because
well, you can still keep it as your number 1.
Nope.
Technically, it's a remake.
Nope.
It's a remake of the first movie. Like the first 10, 20 minutes is a complete remake of the first movie, but just totally outshines the original. And even just, I don't know, there's just something magical about that movie. Like, it's the perfect balance of comedy and horror, and Sam Raimi just, like, I think he was at his best during that movie.
Would you say it's groovy?
It's groovy.
Yeah, it's on my honorable mentions, but yeah, Evil Dead 2 is just miles above the original, and you hit the nail on the head. It's the perfect blend of horror and comedy. It's just a fun movie to sit down and watch.
And it's the movie that got me into horror movies. Like, I did not like horror movies as a kid until I saw Evil Dead 2, and then that movie was the gateway drug to the horror fandom.
I think a lot of that is the fact that originally, whenever I would watch a horror movie, I would be like, well, this is not for me. But once I saw Evil Dead 2, I realized how what's the word I'm looking for? Out there the whole genre is, like, so they're not being really serious about things. This is supposed to be fun. And then
without Bruce Campbell just being his most Bruce Campbelliest, if it was, it was just a total perfect storm of creativity between him, Sam Raimi, Ted Raimi, just all those guys working together to just create something absolutely magical. And as much as I love Army of Darkness is, straight comedy, not much horror, but there was like that perfect blend of comedy and horror. Like, the tension would ramp up, and then Bruce Campbell would do something completely stupid and break that tension,
Absolutely. Joey, what's your number 4?
My number 4, Scream 2.
Good choice.
Good choice.
Yeah.
Good choice.
That was again, it was, I think it was predictable, but like,
another great soundtrack too.
Yeah,
just throwing that in there.
Yeah. So, but after the first one, I was like, well, what can they do besides copycat killers? Like, that's kind of the only direction they could have gone in. And I don't know anything about movies. I knew even less about movies back then. But I was like, it's kind of like, oh yeah, sorry. Imagine it's on my head. There you go. So, hold on, I got this dreadlock thing on my face. So yeah, so I was like, what can they do other than copycat? And it worked awesome. And then the fact that that Aunt Jackie was in it from Roseanne, I was like, Laurie Metcalf. I'm like, whoa! Like, now I love it. This is awesome. But yeah, that's my number 4, and it's one of I think that's like my second or third favorite Scream movie, something like that.
That's one thing I could say about all the Scream movies. They may not all be my favorite, but they all have really good soundtracks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially the first one. The first one's got a great soundtrack.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Wally? What's your number 4?
I'm going to go with Logan.
Oh wow,
Nice.
that's a good one.
A perfect ending to the Wolverine series. And honestly, I don't even know if I had double and triple thoughts about putting it on this list because it seems like such a standalone, but it references previous films. So I put it on there anyway. And it's just such a beautiful movie. It has a little bit of gravitas to it. The whole movie just feels like one of the best Westerns that we never have seen. And it has some of the best like set pieces, like the whole thing where Professor Xavier's flipping out and everybody's just kind of vibrating in place, and Wolverine has to work his way through it. And, just the movie is filled with moments like that. And it has an emotional connection to me at the end of it. I mean, if you haven't seen Logan, and
if you don't cry at the end of that movie,
right,
you are an emotionally stunted human
you're
being.
a robot at that point. I mean, because it's just, and I'm going to spoil it for people who may not have seen it, but here's Wolverine.
Dude, it's like Logan. 8 years old now. Spoil away.
Yeah,
right.
I haven't seen it and I don't care. Go ahead.
But
I don't care if you spoil it.
Impaled after saving who he finds out is his child, and they're holding hands. And as he's dying, his final words are, "Don't become what they wanted to make you," basically. And it's just like, oh my God, this is that I stand up and doing
definitely Hugh Jackman's like best work. Maybe not his entire career, but definitely as Wolverine, as Logan, his best performance.
Okay, yeah, absolutely, and even Patrick Stewart playing, Professor Xavier was fantastic because he's on a different journey in his life than he was other times we've seen him up to now.
Which was such an interesting story about what would happen if someone like Professor X with that much mental power, what would happen if he became, had dementia. Like that's right. He's like an unstable nuclear weapon, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great movie.
A lot like what we were talking about with Dark Knight, and I'll say this because Logan's also my number 4. It feels like a very good Western set in modern times, and they even allude to that when they're watching the Western in the hotel room.
Yeah.
Right.
And just, I agree it was Hugh Jackman's best performance as Wolverine, but I still think Patrick Stewart, his performance as Charles gets a little overlooked in this sense because you see like the strongest mind in the world, and even going back and watching the original X-Men and even into Days of Future Past, he was this wall of support that was never going to break. Well, what would happen if he did break? And the scene when Wolverine's having to go through the casino and everyone's just vibrating like crazy, and he's still, the gore and the kills that he does in this movie are insane, especially during that scene when the military is holding him at gunpoint and he's just sticking his claws through the skulls and everything, and it was just visually insane. Beautiful movie, beautiful story. And to allude to the very end when they bury Logan and X-23 takes the cross and turns it over sideways to make the X, and that's the last shot you see. Like I remember going to see that opening night, and I got teary-eyed.
Right. I was a mess. I was unprepared.
Yeah.
I mean, I had an idea that what was going to happen at the end, but then, you know, the way they did it made me just like, oh, God. Oh, God.
I had little
next to me like, dude.
I had little to no doubt that he was going to die at the end because of the finality that they had been building up to it.
Right.
But I still wasn't ready for it. So that was my number 4, Logan, as well. One of my favorite movies of all time.
You are not prepared.
Jason, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is Aliens. Another movie that not only surpassed the original as far as its genre, because I feel like even though the first one is basically, it's still a sci-fi movie, but it's more of a haunted house in space, which is still a great movie. Don't get me wrong, but it's very slow and it's very tension based. Aliens is just a straight up sci-fi action movie with performances. Like, you could not get a better performance out of a human being than Bill Paxton in that movie.
Game over, man.
Yeah, game over, man. Like, just everything about that movie is absolute sci-fi perfection in that movie.
I think if you wanted to teach sci-fi filmmaking, that's a movie that should be shown in classes.
Yes, agreed.
There's really no flaws in that movie. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I remember watching it soon after I watched the original Alien for the first time, and I was just blown away by, and not to knock the original Alien, but Aliens is just far and above a more entertaining and just a better movie.
And one of the very few movies I've ever seen where the theatrical cut of the movie is still better than the director's cut. Like, don't get me wrong, I like the director's cut, but the pacing of the theatrical cut still outshines the director's cut on that movie.
Joey, what's your number 3?
T2. Actually, let me clarify. Terminator 2.
That was my number 2.
Train Spotting 2 is also called T2. So I'm talking about the Terminator version.
That was my number 1. After I moved The Dark Knight.
Oh my God. Sorry, man.
No, it's fine.
Speaking of great soundtracks, man, I mean, that's another one. I mean, I still love You Can Be Mine by Guns N' Roses. It's probably the most famous song from that movie, or the most well-known song from that movie. But yeah, it was a lot more action to me than the original. I saw the original when I was a little kid, and when he in the original, when he cuts whatever the hell this is called with the thing, and then he's doing this in the mirror so he could see the gears moving. I was like, that's disgusting. And then I must have been like, I don't know, 11 or 12 when first time I saw that. And then when T2 came out, I couldn't wait to go see it. It was so good. Just everything in it is great, man. And a guy that I know is in it, so I'm kind of partial.
Well, Derek knows, our mutual friend Steve Wise, filmmaker Steve Wise. I've had this conversation with him numerous times about how I believe Terminator 2 should be taught in film school, not as far as editing, screenwriting, everything about movie making. That movie needs to be taught in film school. It's an absolute, in my personal opinion, a perfect movie.
Have you do you have the DVD, the one from the 90s?
Yeah, I've got like 8 different copies of that movie.
Yeah,
because it basically has a film school on it.
Yeah.
It tells you step by step how the movie was made.
Yeah, isn't there a making of in the extras, I think?
Right, and it's literally like 10 or 11 hours of material that just shows you, okay, this is what the process of writing it was. This is the process of pre-production. This is how we boarded the movie. This is this is what these people's jobs are. I mean, it goes to the nitty gritty of what filmmaking is like. And it was fascinating to me as a 16, 17-year-old. And it was, even today, I feel that's one of the best DVD sets that you could purchase because of the fact that it has such a deep dive on those. I mean, Robert Rodriguez does a really good job on his as well, the 5-minute film schools that he has on his discs, but this is above and beyond, really.
Yeah.
I watched a really good YouTube series not too long ago where they took Robert Patrick through all the shooting locations.
Are you the legal guardian?
It was just a couple of years ago, but they took him to all the different shooting locations and just talked about the movie, and it was really cool.
No, he's a peacemaker.
Yeah,
he's a raging racist.
He is.
In what?
The Peacemaker.
Yeah. Oh, the John Cena thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
You can't see him? I'm sorry.
I knew it was coming.
People talk about.
I appreciate that as a wrestler, though.
You know, people can say what they want about James Cameron. You know, there's a lot of people out there that say what a big of an asshole he is, how hard he is to work for. He works you to death, but the dude knows how to make movies.
That's why he's the way he is.
Yeah. That's why he's as successful as he is.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm in total agreement. There's really no flaws with that movie. I can, some of the sounds, even like the shotgun, are like some of the most iconic sounds to me in movie history. So there's just little details in that movie that just make it perfect.
My only gripe with that movie is when he comes off the overpass onto the truck when he's on the bike, and you can see the stunt double.
Yeah,
absolutely clearly. That's
they fixed that.
Only gripe.
Damn HD
on the 4K. They fixed it.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
They did a face replacement.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
They did a deep fake. You mean?
Yeah. Well,
so now I gotta see that. I gotta buy that now 4K and watch that.
There's different. The facial replacement is a different thing, but yes, it's basically the same.
I am on Amazon as we speak.
Wally, what's your number 3?
So let me just cut off.
Yeah, go ahead.
For 1 second.
Go ahead.
I said this a second ago, and I said, let me clarify, and I mean Terminator 2. I went to Amazon, I typed in T2 in 4K, and Trainspotting 2 is the first thing that comes up.
That's hilarious.
And it's only $15 in 4K, and there's only 7 left in stock, so order soon. Anyway, sorry.
But my what is this? My third?
Number 3.
Terminator 2 4K is only $9.
Back to the Future 2.
Oh,
nice.
Man, that's a good one.
Back to the Future 2 made me look forward to 2015 unnecessarily. I was a kid whenever I first saw it, and whenever I see it, it does fire those synapses in my brain that associate it with Pizza Hut just hoverboards and things of that nature. But it is one of the most fun times that I've seen. That's a theme for all of these movies, is that I had fun watching them. And while I have no I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. I know it's not really a great movie, but at the same time, it's still one of my favorite movies to watch because of how much everything put together was just iconic. The hoverboard, the flying DeLorean. We've got, and the ending was one of my favorite endings out of
Donald Trump. I mean, Biff Tannen.
Yeah.
Wait,
I never thought it'd be you.
Was 2, what kind of stupid name is that? Or is that 3?
That was 3.
Clint Eastwood.
That was 3. I love 3 too. I
think
that whole trilogy together makes each one of them individually great. That's the whole.
It really does. And that's really, part 2 set up the whole, don't call me chicken side thing. It had really good performances from Michael J. Fox, who played 3 different characters in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really cool. The guy who played George McFly was not George McFly. It was a tour guide from Universal
That's why they hung him upside down, so you couldn't tell.
You couldn't tell. It was a really good movie. I really enjoy it. Robert Zemeckis is one of my favorite filmmakers in general, because I don't know if anybody knows it, but he's like Romancing the Stone, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. The other Back to the Future movies, of course. He's made some mistakes, like Mars Needs Moms, but it was a.
I'm not familiar with that one, but I think I've seen it.
Neither is anyone else. It's one of those when he got really big in the the motion capture movies that he was making, like Christmas Carol and the Polar Express. It was one of those. And
I love the Polar Express. I love that movie.
When I go back to watch it, it's just so uncanny valley. I can't enjoy it.
I know so many people that are like, I just can't get into it. I'm like, man, the first time I saw that, I fell in love with it. I don't know what it is.
Right, I did too. I mean, it was a good little Christmas movie, but
And one thing I love about Robert Zemeckis is, no matter how many truckloads of money they try to back up to his house to be able to do a reboot of Back to the Future, he's just like, no, it's not going to happen.
He refuses to do it. But I respect that, though.
That is a man of principle right there, and I really like that.
Right. But, I really enjoy that movie.
Back to the Future 2 is one of those movies, like I was talking about with Rocky 2, that I appreciate more as have gotten older. Like I always liked the third one. I love the Western style of it, and it's just a fun movie to me.
Right.
The second one, when I watched it as a kid, it was a little too much for me, but as I've gotten older and watched it in more recent memory, I actually really like it. And plus, now I think of that movie every time I hear "I Can't Drive 55" by Sammy Hagar.
Right? Oh my God, that was the first time I ever heard.
Really,
of
I
Sammy
think it's
Hagar.
Speed.
Fair point.
One thing that I thought was really funny is that they use the Sammy Hagar song to make it seem like the world is terrible. And I don't know what that has to say about Sammy Hagar, but I would be offended.
Can I say one more thing about Terminator 2 really quick?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
The 4K Blu-ray version is $9 on Amazon, and the laser disc is $48.
Whoa!
What?
I want the Laserdisc version, but I haven't had a Laserdisc player in 400 years. And there's also a collector's edition Blu-ray version that came out in 2018 that is not available on Amazon, but available elsewhere for $800.
Whoa!
Wow!
It comes with a life-size replica of the arm, the robotic arm. It's $838.84.
Oh wow!
I am very interested in that, but I'm not paying that.
Checking my bank account.
Yeah, right.
Not happening.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just bought the Blu-ray for $9. It's great.
See, I wish I could say I had the money to be like, you know what? If I wanted to drop $800 on a limited edition Blu-ray, I could do it. I'm not saying I would. I would just love to have the ability.
It's an NFT. Nuts for Terminator. Is what you would have to be about.
Well, speaking of that, my number 3 is also Terminator 2 for a lot of the reasons that we've been talking about. I watched it, as a kid. I actually saw a T2 before Terminator 1.
Same.
So I just am blown away by the fact that the effects still hold up. It has a perfect story. The acting is awesome. For what Linda Hamilton is such a badass in that movie.
She is.
I love how the Terminator becomes more human and she becomes more Terminator-like. Like you're watching those two parallel journeys. Like she's becoming what she hated. Was just such an awesome story.
I'm sorry to interrupt. There's something that iconic about that movie that I think a lot of people don't mention, that before that came out, that Schwarzenegger was like, freakishly against sequels. I don't do sequels. I don't do part 2s. Like he just always, I don't remember where I saw this interview. There was some interview pre-Terminator 2 where he's like, I don't want to do sequel movies. I just want to make new stuff. And then that became an idea and he was like, okay, I'll do that.
Right. Well, have you heard the story about how they were on a plane together and he read the script? Arnold Schwarzenegger read the script on the plane, and when he was done with it, he turned to James Cameron, and said, "I was moved." And I'm like, "Well, okay."
He got paid with a jet for that movie.
Wow. Okay.
Fair.
That's what he got paid for. With
one of the New York Jets did he get?
Mark Gastineau. I don't know why that
Still
name
has
popped
a
in my
cage
head.
in his backyard.
I don't know why that name popped in my head.
Jason, what's your number 2?
My number 2 was Terminator 2, but I'm going to move it to the honorable mention list and move up a movie. Back to the Future 3.
Love it.
Because I still love part 2, but as I've gotten older, part 3 has way overtaken part 2 as my favorite sequel in that trilogy. And because I feel like it's much more Doc centric than all the other 2 movies. And I like that. I like the fact that he had to struggle with, it was a love story. He found love, but he couldn't stay there, and just the way that movie ended with the train robbery and all that stuff. Like, is this a robbery? It's a science experiment. Like the whole movie is just, it's so fun. And I was never really, still to this day, not really a fan of Westerns, but there's just something about that movie that just it's, I don't know. It's just so good.
There's really just 2 Westerns I enjoy watching, and it's that one and Tombstone.
Tombstone.
Yeah.
I knew it. It.
Like, there's something about the setting and having that whole. I mean, we see a lot of fish out of water type scenarios, but it's turned on its head a little bit because Doc is here making it work. He's got this giant refrigerator that he's built. He's got, for iced tea of all things. That's all he uses it for. And, he's got this ridiculous gun sight that he invented, and it's so fun.
And one of my favorite parts of that movie is when they're in the bar and he's all torn up about breaking up with what was her name? Clara. And he's just sitting there, like, telling the story. And they're like, how many has he had? That's still his first one. He hasn't even drank that one yet.
He just likes to hold it.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't go out there, everybody everywhere is going to say that Clint Eastwood is the biggest yellow belly in the West.
Oh, man, I got to watch that again.
Where'd you learn to shoot like that? 7-Eleven.
Joey, what's your number 2?
Number 2, the original Rocky 4.
Ooh, I dig it.
Not the new one that came out.
I haven't seen the new one.
So you have seen the new one.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It is a different movie. Man.
It is a very different movie.
Yeah, it's good, but it's anything that would make you crack a smile and laugh has been removed. I'm like, there's no robot, there's no like the man's tongue didn't come through customs, like giggling, like there's just like, I don't know. It's so much more serious, and like I'm like a purist when it comes to Rocky 4. Like I can close my eyes and watch the whole thing in my head right now, the original, like scene by scene. But there was like, I don't know, there was I don't remember what happened in the new one beforehand, but it went from one scene to showing Apollo Creed in the pool, and I'm like, dude, there's like 4 minutes I just missed right here. Oh, maybe it was after that when he was talking to Rocky and they were outside throwing a football around, and I'm like, there was no football in the real movie. Come on, man. And then they like changed like the Dolph Lundgren spoke at the first press conference. Like, no, it was a lot better, I thought, in the first one. I appreciate what Stallone was trying to do, but in my opinion, they should have took the original and just added all the stuff in. And if it ended up being 4 hours, it was 4 hours. Like it ended up being like 45 minutes of new or new footage added, but then they removed 45 minutes of the original, so the movie is still the same length. Like in my mind, like, dude, just if you're gonna call it the director's cut, just throw all that stuff back in. Let it be 4 hours or 3.5 hours. Yeah, it's good, and it's on the PlizX if anyone wants to see it. But it's, I don't know, it just
it feels like a completely different movie.
Yeah, I mean, it says something to me that how much I love Rocky 4, and I've only watched the newer one once, and after that I've gone back and watched the one twice already since then. Like, I don't know. I don't want to say it's not for me because I still love the movie, but it's just so different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to see it because had not heard really a good thing about it yet.
Neither did I, but I watched it anyway because, like I said, I'm a purist. I had to watch it.
Because I'm like you, I still love the original Rocky 4.
Yeah,
like
that's why I specified it for this list. But I meant the original.
I just remember I remember seeing that in the theater as a kid, and just one of those. God. It was one of those pop culture moments, man.
I remember Rocky 4 came out. The town I lived in Jersey was called Emerson. It's where my mother still lives, where my parents lived before my dad passed away. My mother still lives there. But I remember going to the movie theater in that town, the Emerson Quad. They had 4 theaters. It was like, wow, a building with 4 different theaters in it. It was like unheard of back then. And I remember, so the movie theater was here. There was a long sidewalk, and it made a right angle, and then it went to a whole shopping plaza. And the first building after the corner was a bowling alley. And I remember the line was way past the bowling alley. My uncle, myself, and my mother were online for that movie, and I wanted to see it so bad. And I was like, man, I can't wait. We gotta go. I begged my mother to take me to see it. And my uncle's like, oh, go see it, whatever. But I remember waiting online outside the bowling alley to get in to see that movie. And I remember like loving it. I can't wait to see it again. And then, whatever, VHS came out, and I'm like, this is beautiful. I get to watch it whatever I want. And then I grew up, and then in high school, I worked at a video store for 7 years. So I'm like, this is beautiful. I get to watch anything I want. And that was like, that tape was like worn out more, faster than anything.
Like, Rocky 4 all day. That's all you watched for like 7 years.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the movies that we were allowed to play. One of the few we were allowed to play in the store because there's not really a lot of bad language in it.
If he dies, he dies.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, when you think of movies from the 80s, Rocky 4 has to be up there on the list of like names that are synonymous with that decade.
I still have the, speaking of Rocky 4, I still have the edited for television version from like Channel 4 that was on like Christmas or something when I was a kid. Wow. And all I remember is like as they went to commercial, they had 2 big blow up boxing gloves that started like this, and then they would turn this way. And then once it got to where you saw the actual top, one of them had the Russian flag, one had the US flag, and they would hit and they would both explode, and then it would cut the commercial. And then when they came back, it would they would do it again, and they would explode, and then it would go back to the movie. And I was like, wow, this is great. And I filmed it. I recorded it. I still have it. It's great. I love that movie, dude.
It's so fun. Like 3 and 4, like we talked about earlier, how they may not have aged as well, but they're fun movies. Like I love watching Mr. T in Rocky 3. I like watching Drago in Rocky 4. I like all the training montages. One of the best fights in the entire Rocky series just because of how elaborate it is and how big of a deal it feels.
I got a really quick story about Rocky 3, just because you mentioned it before. There's a guy named, I'm not going to say his name actually, but he's a wrestling promoter from Pennsylvania. I'm not going to say it because I forget his name. I know it starts with a B, but I don't remember if it's Brian, Brad, Bud, Bill. I forget what the hell it is now. I'll remember it in 5 minutes. But this guy used to sell wrestling tapes at wrestling events. He had a merch table or whatever. And he would always have a bunch of tapes and T-shirts and signed posters and autographed 8x10s or whatever. And one of the tapes he had was, there's his name, so-and-so's favorite wrestling matches. And it was weird. It was like he just recorded stuff off of TV and then put it on this tape and sold it as like his favorite matches, like as if that was important to anybody else in the world. But the number one favorite match was Rocky Balboa versus Thunder Lips. And I go, are you kidding me? That doesn't count. He's like, oh, dude, no, man, it was great. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, man. I'll never forget that. I mean, I could tell you where the hell I was standing in the building, in the venue when I first saw that. It was insane. He just put the whole scene, that entire fight from the movie, that was on the tape. And I'm like, that doesn't count as one of your favorite wrestling matches. I just thought that was a little funny side story.
I saw on the Sylvester Stallone merch website you can actually get a Thunder Lips cape. It is hilarious. You should look that up.
I'm typing it right now.
But, Wally, what's your number 2?
My number 2, if I've moved all of these because a lot of them have been taken. And I don't want to. I don't want to double up.
Sorry.
That's the problem I wanted to come up with.
$100 for the Thunder Lips cape.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh wow, good
The
gravy.
Ultimate Male. This is amazing. Sorry, I'm gonna mute myself.
But I'm gonna go with Toy Story 3.
Oh, so good. I wanted to put that on my top 5 list.
And here's why. We don't sit here and talk about a lot of animated movies whenever we're talking about the top whatever, and unless it's top animated movies. But the thing that really stands out about Toy Story 3 is how kind of adult it is. It's not like it's not so adult that kids can't watch the movie, but it has such a great escape vibe, and it has a wonderful cast of characters that are incredibly deep in a way that is not normally seen in children's media. And the ending, I mean, I wasn't ready. I was not ready for the last third of that movie. And a lot of it has to do with, the incinerator scene, which, I mean, whenever I wrote my review, it started out with a spoiler, and I feel very bad about it, but I started it out saying, okay, there's, but the way talking about how, your favorite characters from this children's movie are heading toward their doom, and they're trying to get out to a point where one of them look over to their normal leader and say, well, what do we do? And his answer is, we accept our fate. And they are about to be set on fire together. And
when they all clutch each other, I was just like, no,
they start holding
you
each other's hands.
You can't do this.
Right. We're about to watch them melt to death. What the hell is happening here? And then we have the Deus Ex aliens, where they have the claw, which I think is clever.
That was great.
come down and save them. But then, and then we have the whole, passing everything to Bonnie scene, where, the owner of the toys, Andy, is going to college. So he stops over at his little sister's friend's place and gives her the toys. Now, I never really understood why he gave it to Bonnie and not his sister, but that's okay. And I guess his sister didn't want all of them, but it was a lot of emotions that happened in that case, especially whenever, he's driving away and Woody says the final line of the film, so long, partner. And, and then the movie ends and it's like, oh my God. And then they made a fourth movie for some reason.
Which wasn't bad, but we've talked about this before, but Toy Story 3 was the perfect end to a trilogy. Not just Toy Story, but a trilogy.
Right. I mean, it should have ended it.
So I was 9 when Toy Story 1 came out.
Right.
And then years later, when they finally announced Toy Story 3, I was skeptical at first because I was like, what other stories do they have left to tell? But when they said that Andy was going to be in college and it was going to be the toys having to accept that, I thought to myself, okay, this will work. And like you, I was not ready for the end of that movie because there's been very few movies that I've cried at, and that was one of them because it was like watching my childhood drive away.
Like, and I can tell, like, there's a point when I'm watching a movie where I realize I'm being too emotional. Like, because I can feel, like, the expression on my face going, like, what the hell is happening? And I can feel my eyes. It's weird to explain, but, like, I can feel how my eyes are kind of, like, wide open, but also kind of sunken. And it's like, what is going to happen here? Yeah. And I caught myself doing that, and I'm like, I got to sit back in my chair. What's going to happen? And I look over at my wife at the time was like, are you seeing this shit? It's like, it's one of those things. It was, I love that movie so much. Yeah. And I still don't know why they need a fourth one, but I'm not mad it exists. I just don't think it's necessary.
Agreed. So 1 and 2 for me were very, very hard to pick. They're really 1A and 1B to me, but I'm going to classify it as 2. My number 2 is Empire Strikes Back, aka it's my favorite movie of all time. But
it's going to be one of my picks. My honorables.
You take the original Star Wars, it changes the movie business and filmmaking in general. So how do you top it? Well, you top it off with better writing, better directing, better storytelling, better sets. The Hoth battle is still one of my favorite pieces of cinema, not just in Star Wars, but I love the Hoth battle. I love the music. I love the setting. I think the walkers look badass. You get to introduce Yoda. And of course, the revelation of Darth Vader being Luke's father. Spoilers if you haven't seen Star Wars.
Oh my God.
But,
I'm so scandalized.
Yeah, I know.
Not only that, but just one of the greatest scenes in movie history. And every time I see this scene, especially whenever I saw it, I've seen it quite a few times in the theater, especially for the re-release. I saw it in the theater as a kid, but the same scene every single time in Cloud City when Luke is looking around by himself and then you hear that breath. It's like, the Force is with you, young Skywalker, but you are not a Jedi yet. And it's just that scene, like just goosebumps down the arm every single time.
Perfectly delivered by James Earl Jones.
Absolutely.
But it's, you also take the characters on journeys of growth. You have Han and Leia's relationship start to build while they're fleeing from the Empire. You have Luke discovering the backstory of the Jedi, or as best he can with only one still being alive. But you see the natural growth of everyone. And I just thought it was flawlessly done.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very close. I'm curious as to if anybody's going to figure out what my number 1 is, but we'll get to that. Jason, what is your number 1?
Well, my number 1 was Empire Strikes Back. And because like you said, it's one of those movies that completely is part of a trilogy, but it completely elevates everything around it. And I don't think if Empire would not have been as good as it is, I don't know if Star Wars would be what it is today, because you got most of your mythology going forward from Empire Strikes Back.
Absolutely.
Especially, we got the Book of Boba Fett right now. We wouldn't know who the Mandalorians were if it wasn't for Empire Strikes Back. I mean,
I
that
haven't seen
movie
Boba Fett yet. Is it any good?
I like it, but the third episode was a little.
I haven't heard much good about it, but I haven't watched it yet.
It's
I'm gonna
worth
wait
watching.
I'm gonna wait till it's done before I give it.
I give it a full because it's awfully.
I watched every Mandalorian religiously, but I haven't seen any of Boba Fett at all.
Yeah, it's not as good as the Mandalorian was at this stage.
I love it. The Mandalorian's not finished, is it?
No, there's going to be a third season.
Okay. I think in December.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh God, December. It's only January. God, are these people kidding me?
But yeah, as far as sequels go, I mean, Empire Strikes Back set the tone from that moment forward, because before that, you really didn't have sequels. The sequels were seen as just lesser, cash grabs at that point. And it was after that point when the movie industry was like, maybe we can make sequels that are as good or better than the first movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Joey, you're number 1.
Halloween 2018.
Ooh.
I like it. I had a feeling one of them was going to make an appearance on your list.
I was going to move Empire out of the way because you had Empire at 2, so I was going to replace it with Halloween 18 because that was on my runners-up list.
Yeah, I mean, just because it's a direct sequel to the original, erasing all the other stuff, essentially. I mean, we talked about it. We've talked about it how many times now? 18, 19, 20, and 21, I think. So did we talk about it for 4 years? for
I think
four
so.
Halloween episodes or something like that.
We're going to, yes.
Yeah. So that's. I mean, that's it for me, man. That's
Well,
gotta be
it perfectly fits. Like, even though it's been, we've had lots of Halloween sequels after the original,
Yeah.
but I love how Halloween 18 came in and said none of those exist. Okay, so we're just gonna fill in 40 years of backstory and with basically just little pieces of dialogue here and there, and let you fill in the blanks of what happened over the last 40 years. And it made Laurie Strode into, a recluse who, you would expect after something like that, who lived the last 40 years of her life, behind, barbed wire fence and guns, basically. And they're the perfect yin and yang, Michael Myers and her. And I don't know, there's just something about that movie that just makes it so utterly watchable over and over again.
Yeah.
Well, it also captured the feel of the original like none of the other sequels did.
Yeah, exactly.
I also have Halloween Kills in my honorables, but to me, like 2018 Kills are almost like one big movie that they had to split up for time reasons. So
yeah,
they're kind of interchangeable, not interchangeable in order, but you know what I mean, on this list at least.
I like it. Wally, what's your number one?
So there's only one movie that I've ever seen in a movie theater where my blood pressure was affected by how much I was enjoying it. Like, I could feel my body vibrating to the point where I didn't know if I was going to survive the screening. And this film was Avengers End Game.
Yes.
As soon as the, Avengers Assemble happens and everyone just starts running and screaming at each other, like I'm like, this is, yes, this is what I wanted. This is like whenever I first saw X-Men 2 and there was a scene where the X-Men fight all of the guards at Stryker's compound, but we didn't see it. It all happened off screen, and we saw the very end where Storm just knocked some dude over. And the thing that just popped in my head was, why can't we see everybody fighting in the same way that we would see on this beautiful splash page in a double-sized annual comic book? And that's what Endgame gave me. And it exactly what I wanted. And it nearly murdered me.
Well, I can tell you the moment that Steve Rogers got Mjolnir was that theater erupted like in nothing I've ever seen before or since. And I think the adrenaline rush that I got during when that scene happened, I've been chasing that high ever since. And I don't think I'll ever have anything match that moment.
Right. It's one of those things where it's like, man, I wish I could experience that for the first time again. And it's frustrating because I know that no matter what they do down the line, I don't think I'll live to see anything as exciting, anything as satisfying, anything that is as fun as that movie was. And especially the opening night, I wasn't able to see Spider-Man opening night, but I was able to see it in the theater of people. But even that was, while it approached it, it was not the same energy that came off of everybody in that theater.
Dude,
I mean, afterwards, they gave out cigarettes. It was that much of a pleasurable experience.
Dude, just thinking about On Your Left. And
Yes.
Oh man, the air was electric in the theater.
It's like everybody got quiet. It's like, wait, was that? And then, as soon as we saw T'Challa walking through the damn portal, and everybody's like, oh, and then of course there's people back as if he can hear us, and it was great. I loved every moment of it.
So I didn't get to see Endgame on opening night, but I saw it the next day. And the moment when Steve Rogers grabs Mjolnir, and there's only like maybe 10, 15 people in the theater, I yelled, "Oh shit," really loud. And I'm just like, sorry. But no, it was just such a cool moment. I was like, oh, I forgot he can do that. So,
and the 14 other people were children. Not
But that actually is a great segue to my number one, because my number one is Spider-Man No Way Home. Because growing up, loved Spider-Man, watched the animated series on Fox religiously as a kid, read the comic books from my uncle's collection. One of my favorite movie-going experiences was that same uncle taking me to see the original Tobey Maguire movie in 2002 on opening day. So, knowing the anticipation of the movie and revealing that they were bringing back Doc Ock and Green Goblin and the other villains, essentially bringing together 3 generations of stories into one, and it took 2 studios to do it. And I'm not saying that to knock Endgame at all, but the fact that they were literally brought everyone back was a miracle in filmmaking, and something that if you had told me 20, 30 years ago that this would happen, I would have said you were absolutely insane. But you know, that moment when Andrew Garfield comes through the portal and rips his mask off, there were 2 people in the front of the theater, literally they jumped out of their chairs and were throwing their fists in the air. It was absolutely, like you were talking about with Endgame, it was electric. And there were so many moments like that. And it's something that I will never forget. I've seen the movie 4 times in theaters. And I want to go see it one more time before its theatrical run ends. But I can't say enough good things about that movie. Like it hit me way deeper than I was expecting it to. Even though like a lot of things happened that I expected, when they did happen, I still wasn't quite emotionally ready for it.
I see you speaking, Wally.
I can't hear you, Wally.
You're muted, bro.
Man, I coughed earlier, and that was my downfall. That was what I was trying to say, is that there was a when it comes to that particular scene when everybody came through, there was that electricity that you don't normally get from a movie going experience, and it's a testament to the screenwriting and everything that they gave us what we wanted, but they did it in a way we didn't know we were going to get it, if that makes sense. It's like, all of the memes, all of the references, all of the, it could have been done so blatantly fan servicey that it was just, well, this is garbage. But it ended up being such a celebration of Spider-Man. And that's what was best about it.
I just hope people realize how lucky that we all are at this point, because I remember being a kid in the 80s and 90s and wanting movies like this, but all we had were, Incredible Hulk TV movies and Roger Corman's Fantastic Four, which you had to get as a bootleg, and Punisher with Dolph Lundgren. Like, those were the comic book movies we had, and I never would have dreamed in a million years that we would have gotten a movie like Spider-Man No Way Home or the Avengers or any of these movies.
Right.
It's crazy.
I remember my friend James and I had a conversation where he was like, oh, I wouldn't it be great if they made an Avengers movie, blah, 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 all this kind of thing. And I was like, no, different companies own the rights to different movies and all, never going to happen in our lifetime. Well, I'm a liar. That, and I thought I was going to die a lot sooner.
A lot sooner than what?
Hmm?
A lot sooner than what? Because you ain't gone yet, brother.
Yeah.
No. I'm not. No.
Yeah.
I'm staying alive for another 50 years.
Hopefully so.
I have to go see No Way Home soon. I've heard so many good things. I didn't actually realize it was still in theaters, but
Yeah.
it starts in 15 minutes, a mile and a half from my house. But I'm not going to be able to make it. I just looked up showtimes. Like I didn't realize it was still in theaters.
Yeah. Oh, it's dominating the box
long
office.
run. Yeah.
It's
still making like $1 billion a weekend. They're not pulling it out of the theaters
No.
anytime
Right.
soon.
no.
I mean, it is currently in the top 10 highest grossing movies of all time right now. I think it's number 8 now or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
And they're not going to take it out of theaters until it's number 1.
Well, they'll probably re-release it with new footage.
Honestly, yeah, they probably will.
Hey, can I ask something? Speaking of that, did anyone hear about the Halloween Kills extended edition?
No.
I know it's out, but I haven't watched it yet.
I didn't even know there was one. It's
didn't
4
either.
extra minutes. It popped up on my Plex. On my, I saw it the other day. It showed up somewhere, and I was like, "Wow, it says extended, and there's like 4 extra minutes." I didn't watch it
4 minutes.
yet, but I don't know. I didn't even know that existed. So
A lot can happen in 4 minutes.
Wally said
That's
that's the
right.
footage, and that's the first thing I thought of.
Yeah.
Ask my ex-girlfriends.
If you ever,
And that's twice a night.
that's 2 shows.
on that note, Jason, what were your honorable mentions?
Let's see. I have a couple here. Spider-Man 2 was on my my honorable mentions. Is one of the greatest, still to this day, one of the greatest comic book movies ever made. I mean, that's why they brought Alfred Molina back for Spider-Man No Way Home, because he's one of the greatest villains of all time.
The power of the sun in the palm of my hand.
And
Yes. Of course, I had Back to the Future 3 there. I had Empire Strikes Back on there before I went to number 1. Another movie that I put this on the list because I would have said Fury Road, because I think Fury Road is one of the greatest action movies ever made. But I consider that to be a complete reboot of the entire thing. But of the original Mad Max trilogy, the Mel Gibson trilogy,
Yep.
Road Warrior is one of the greatest movies ever. And it totally outshines the first and the third movie. The first movie is one of those movies where, like, I think you should watch it, but it's not going to be something you're ever going to watch again. Beyond Thunderdome is great, but there was so much that went on behind the scenes of that movie that it's like 2 different movies. And because George Miller lost his writing partner before filming began, and George Miller didn't even want to do the movie at that point, but he was kind of contractually obligated to, so he didn't really direct half that movie. Like, he was just kind of barely there. And it just felt so 80s-ified, if that get my meaning.
I get what you mean.
But Road Warrior is an absolute perfect post-apocalyptic movie. Like, it's so out there, but it's utterly likable and watchable. And even though it's crazy, like the fashions that they put in them, like, in a post-apocalyptic world, who's gonna dress like that, really? But it's still, it fits within that world, and it's a great, absolutely one of the great sci-fi movies of all time.
now you got me wanting to watch Road Warrior again. I haven't watched it in a long time.
He's got me thinking about how I wish George Miller was able to make his version of the Justice League.
Yeah. I mean, some of it was shot, wasn't it? Because I've seen screenshots of, all of them together.
Well, they did chemistry. Chemistry reels, but otherwise they did shoot some of it, and not a whole enough for it to really show us anything.
Yeah.
And I really feel like George Miller got to do, I feel like it was the 1982 version of Fury Road. Like once he got to the point of Fury Road, he was absolutely 100% certain of what he wanted to do with that type of movie. But I think Road Warrior was as close as he could get at the time with the resources he had.
Yeah. Agreed. Joey, what about you? What were your honorable mentions?
I got 5 here, and then I have one that didn't have a sequel, but I thought it should. I thought that would be an interesting category too. So my honorables are my first one, of course, Godfather 2. I'm Italian.
Yep.
Star Wars Episode 3.
That was on my honorable mention.
Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones.
Oh man, I was gonna put that on my list because I'm one of the few people that actually like Temple of Doom more than I like Raiders. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Raiders, but I like watching Temple of Doom more. I don't know why.
I love Raiders, man.
Chilled monkey brains.
Yeah, and for dessert, chilled monkey brains. The new Scream, which I'm not going to spoil, and my fifth honorable mention is House 2: The Second Story.
Ooh, I love that movie.
And then
I haven't seen that in forever.
Right.
I might have to watch that tonight.
Dude,
it used to be on TV constantly.
When I don't know, when House came out, I think in 86, the original, 85, 86. So I was like 8, 9 years old. And I remember watching it with my sister. And the only thing I remembered was the guy opened up his medicine cabinet in his bathroom, dove through it, fell for 6,000 miles, whatever, ended up in water, and then popped up out of the water, and he was in Vietnam. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? And so then when I heard there was a sequel, I'm like, I have to see this. This has got to be it didn't have anything to do with the original one. It was kind of like a different movie or a new movie, but it was called House 2. But I haven't watched it in so many years, so long.
There's another movie that you just reminded me of that I was actually going to put on my list, but it's not technically a sequel. Is Return of the Living Dead.
I thought you were going to say Troll 2.
Yeah, right. Return of the Living Dead is a weird movie because it's not in the George Romero zombie verse, but it references the first movie, Night of the Living Dead, as being in that universe, but it's not, and it's weird. And then it went off with its whole set of sequels after that. But I love Return of the Living Dead. I think that's a really great zombie movie.
And then I have one that I thought should have gotten a sequel that never did, and that's Shocker.
Oh yeah, Mitch Pileggi.
Yes, I dig that movie. That's another awesome soundtrack. Shocker's got it amazing. That one and Rocky 4 might be my favorite 2 movie soundtracks. But I thought that should have got some kind of sequel, and it never did.
That was a Wes Craven movie, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I've actually never seen that
in a long time either.
Oh man, it's good. It's good. I love it. Horace Pinker.
I'll have to look to see if it's available anywhere.
Good stuff.
There used to be a punk band around here we used to play with all the time, and their name was Horace Pinker back in the 90s.
I've actually heard of a band with that name.
Yeah.
Wait, they may have played up here a couple times because I
think they may have been from that area. I think.
Yeah, I recognize the name obviously from the movie, but it always stuck with me that there was a band named that because of the movie. So they may have actually been from around here. You're right.
Yeah.
Wally, what were your honorable mentions?
We have Gremlins 2: The New Batch.
Oh, this podcast is over.
That's a good one, dude. I wish I thought of that.
I mean, I said it because Jason hates them.
I got justified on there's a Facebook group I'm on about people over 40 or whatever, and pop culture stuff. And one of the people on there said that they were 7 years old when they saw it in the theater too, and it gave them nightmares for 4 years. And I'm like, there's another person, so I'm not the only one.
But that's the thing. I also saw it at 5, and I'm fine. I love those movies. There's no excuse. But yes, I loved it. You know, lots of satire of the first movie. Hulk Hogan's in it.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with that fucking guy. I mean that freaking guy. Sorry.
Right, that guy. We got Superman 2.
Nice.
Is a really good one.
Yep.
And
with the fruit roll up chest thing.
right.
Yes.
Now we're just making stuff up.
So which version, the original theatrical cut or the Richard Donner cut?
Honestly, either way will go. It's the same movie with different outlooks, but you know, I just feel like the Superman 2 just had a lot of like iconic things that I love about Superman is in that, you know, like Neo before Zod, you know, all that greatness. Then there's X2, X-Men United.
That's a good one.
Good movie.
And finally, John Wick 2.
Nice.
Never saw that. I saw John Wick 1.
Just for the scene where him and Common are taking pot shots at each other with silenced pistols in a busy terminal.
Mm-hmm.
And I know in real life
that's actually a meme now
like
where
that.
somebody had that scene going and they're like, this is Kanye and Pete Davidson taking out the trash
Like-
in the morning.
Like,
I gotta see that movie.
But it's the only thing that really gets me about that movie is the whole setup is, you know, whenever John Wick got out of the lifestyle, and I don't mean swinging, I mean, you know,
The lifestyle.
yes, the assassin lifestyle. He gave this person basically a token that would allow him to come back into it for one last mission, and I feel like that is quite a big that doesn't make any sense, but whatever. I'll go with it. It's still a good movie. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I didn't like the third one as much. All right, I think I'm done. Derek.
My honorable mentions: Toy Story 3, Halloween 2018, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
I didn't think of any of the Harry Potter movies.
To me, like, Prisoner of Azkaban was what made me a fan of those movies. I loved its darker turn. I love Gary Oldman as Sirius Black.
Oh my God, I've done my waiting. 12 years of it.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of Endgame, I put Infinity War. I feel like it gets a little overlooked because of the epic scale of Endgame, but Infinity War is just such an amazing movie.
Right.
And then also The Dark Knight and Evil Dead 2.
One of my favorite memories is leaving Infinity War and everyone filing out of the theater.
It was
silence.
Yep.
I mean, just silence. And the people outside excited to see this movie. Was it good? You'll see the movie. It's like, I mean, I love the movie. I don't want to talk about it right now.
Yeah.
I'm emotionally broken.
Still
still
processing it.
You know what? Before we go tonight, I am going to go ahead and just add to my honorable mentions.
No.
Halloween 3.
Come on. I knew it. I knew it was coming at some
You're
point.
a monster.
Has nothing to do with the Halloween movies, whatever. It's still one of my favorite weird sci-fi horror movies.
I like it.
I like
so
it.
Let me say one thing. That gift that I bought you, Jay, was the first time I've ever spent money on anything Halloween 3 related.
Then he should feel honored.
And it's proudly displayed right now in my living room.
I thought you would dig that. I like I said, I saw that, instantly thought of you.
Tom Atkins is going to be at Pensacon this year, so I'm very excited.
I'm so bummed that I can't be there.
Next year, my friend. Next year.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. I wish four of us.
There's four of us
lived. For some reason, I was thinking it was me and four of you, but I'm one of the four, so that makes four. I wish that the four of us lived closer together so we could do like movie night once a week. Like,
I know.
That'd
either
be a
we
blast.
go to a theater, like we go to a theater, or we just take turns going to each other's place and we alternate or whatever, and just watch something. Man, I wish we were closer.
That'd be fun.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah. There used to be a
Absolutely.
group of guys that I would do that with when new releases would come out that we all wanted to see. We would go like once a month.
Oh,
Like
we
the
used to do that when we were at Sicily's.
The last movie we saw together was the first Austin Powers, which I hated, and I haven't gone with those guys since.
You know, we could do that in the metaverse here pretty soon. We could meet up in the metaverse. And
Oh, you know what?
Yeah.
We could do that with yeah. I forgot we could do that online. There's plenty of watch together options.
Well, before we go, you guys have any? We'll start with Jason. Any website, social media you want to plug?
Go check out me and Derek for our retro gaming show over at Nerd Cave Retro, at Nerd Cave Retro on Twitter and Instagram. We talk about retro games, and last week Derek was out ill, so I had to have Mr. Wally Phelps join in, and we talked about Tiny Toon Adventures for the Nintendo Entertainment System.
And the show suffered for it.
No, it did not. That was a great episode. But yeah, go check us out over at Nerd Cave Retro. And also I do another podcast called Open Micers with Mr. Jacob Craig. And we talk about comedy. We talk to comedians, musicians, actors, anybody in the trenches of the entertainment industry at Open Micers on Twitter and Instagram.
Joey?
You can follow me on all social platforms at Joey Image TV. Send me all your hate mail at joeyimage@gmail.com and go see the new Scream, please. Oh, and play Days Gone, whether you're on a PS4, PS5, or PC. Please play it. It's worth your time.
I have it. I have it on my hard drive because you keep talking about it, and I keep forgetting to play it.
The playing it is this reminds me of Seinfeld. Like, anybody could take a reservation. It's the holding of the reservation that matters. Anybody could download the game. It's the playing of it that matters. I don't know why that's the first thing that popped on it, but yeah, I will defend and promote that game as much as I can till when I die, I'm gonna be buried in a freaking Deacon St. John cosplay outfit, probably.
That was a great episode. I listened to that the other day when it dropped, and it made me
you heard
want to
it
play
the
the
Days
game
Gone
again.
podcast?
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Thanks, man. I didn't think anyone. I haven't heard anything about it yet.
I was gonna let you know I listened to it, and I forgot to let you know I listened to it the other day.
Yeah, thank you. One dude on Reddit said that it was good, but he said it to the host and didn't tag me, so I didn't see it until she sent me. Actually, today she sent me a screenshot of the comment, and I'm like, that's the only feedback I've seen so far. But that was a lot of fun, and we're gonna do another one coming up that I can't talk about, where we're gonna talk about mods, PC mods, and I just said I can't talk about it, and I told you anyway.
I'll go on Twitter and say it was a great episode. Does the Days Gone podcast have, what is their Twitter? Is it just Days Gone Pod?
No, I forget, but she doesn't use Twitter anymore.
Oh, well, never mind then.
Yeah, she's like, I just never got into it. I made a Twitter and I haven't used it in years.
Because I don't use Reddit. I don't.
I'm 2016
I'm scared of Reddit.
Was like the last. Well, Claire, the host, she's mostly on Instagram at Days Gone Pod.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't even remember what her Twitter is. I have it somewhere. I tweeted to her so I wouldn't forget it. But she's like, I haven't used it since like 2016 or something like that, so it's not really important. Okay.
And last but not least, Mr. Phelps.
I got nothing. No, you can follow me at the Real Big Wall everywhere. I occasionally, I don't have a schedule, but I occasionally stream on Twitch, mostly Fortnite with I Am the Rampage, and my Twitter has become mostly Fortnite, me yelling about Fortnite into the clouds, basically.
Well, it's reached New Jersey, so I don't play Fortnite, but I see your posts, and now I don't know. I'm terrible at it, but if I have time to play with somebody, I would love to play with you, dude.
Oh, absolutely.
I still have it on my computer. I just haven't played it in so long.
It's so funny because it's like, I'll go through spurts where I'm like, this is the greatest game. And then, lately I've been yelling about how it's either way too easy or way too hard. And there's no middle ground. And today, me and Rampage were playing, and we weren't streaming, but we won like 5 of them. But each game was very, it felt like we were in our own skill level. And I'm like, well, did they fix it? Did they hear me say that I will never spend money on this again, and then just start doing stuff to it? So yeah, But yeah, you'll also see all of my other information on I can't speak. The Real Big Wall. You'll see all my other information if I have any kind of shows or anything like that I might be doing.
I need to throw one more plug in that I forgot about.
Yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I'm doing another podcast about Days Gone. The first week of February, I think. Check out my Joey Image TV on Twitter, and I'm linking it on there. And I talked about it on there. I don't even remember. Jesus, I forget the name of the podcast now because I'm a complete idiot. It's not the Days Gone podcast. It's somebody else that heard that and asked me, "Hey, would you want to be on my show?" Like, I'd love to talk about Days Gone. And then, like I said before, I'm doing another episode of the Days Gone podcast, probably in like March. The Claire, the host, is already booked up until like March, April. So I'm going to try to fit myself in somewhere in between there. But thanks. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this top 5 list. This was fun.
Thank you
for asking me.
This was fun. This was really hard to do, but it was fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks again to Jason, Wally, and Joey for coming on the show for that awesome discussion on top 5 movie sequels. Now we're going to move into the listener list that you guys submitted on the Feature Presentation Podcast Facebook page. And if you want to submit your list as well, anytime I do one of these top 5s, just head over to facebook.com/featureprespod. And I do apologize for not including this in the segment with Jason, Wally, and Joey. We did run a bit short on time, or I ran a bit short on time because I had to appear on another podcast shortly after we finished recording. So did run out of time. I do apologize for that, but we're back here to read off the listeners list for top 5 movie sequels. And we're going to kick things off with Mr. Jacob Craig, co-host of the Open Micers podcast. Number 5, Spider-Man No Way Home with recency bias. I can't dispute that at all. 4, Avengers End Game. 3, The Empire Strikes Back. 2, Rocky IV. You heard the in-depth discussion we had for Rocky IV earlier. And number 1, surprising pick, Men in Black 2, which I was not expecting at all, but I actually like Men in Black 2. I know it doesn't get as much credit as the first one, but it's a fun movie nonetheless, so I've got no issue with that. Josh Shinnework, number 5, Scream 2. 4, Godfather 2. I do have a confession to make. I've never seen any of the Godfather movies. I know I really need to change that. I've heard 2 is great. I'm sure it's more than worthy of being on this list, but I've never seen them. 3, Aliens. 2, Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And number 1, Spider-Man 2. And for the longest time, this was my favorite Spider-Man movie until No Way Home came out, but no issue with Spider-Man 2 being number 1. That's one of my favorite movies of all time. Steve Wise, Aliens, Terminator 2, these aren't numbered. I'm assuming this is 5-1, so let me start over. Steve Wise, number 5, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. 4, The Dark Knight. 3, The Empire Strikes Back. 2, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. And number 1, Aliens. Jonathan McIntosh, number 5, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. 4, Spider-Man 2 / No Way Home, so that's a tie. 3, Back to the Future 2. 2, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And number 1, The Empire Strikes Back. And his honorable mentions are Captain America the Winter Soldier, Hannibal, and Godfather 2. Wade Vatican, honorable mentions, Empire Strikes Back and Rocky 2. Number 5, Aliens. 4, Return of the Jedi. Number 3, Rocky 3. He says, I pity him. 2, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Junior. And number 1, T2, Judgment Day. And he notes, Hasta la vista, baby. Tyler Watson, number 5, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. 4, T2, Judgment Day. 3, Avengers End Game. 2, Empire Strikes Back. And number 1, Spider-Man No Way Home. His honorable mentions, Spider-Man 2, Back to the Future Part 2, TMNT 2, that being Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Thor Ragnarok. Nick Smith, Empire Strikes Back, Aliens, T2, Terminator 2, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, and Dawn of the Dead. Carlos Longoria, a.k.a. I Am the Rampage, over on the Nerd Cave Retro podcast. His honorable mentions: Star Wars The Last Jedi, Spider-Man 2, Logan, Rocky 3 and 4, Evil Dead 2, and Aliens. Number 5, Kill Bill Volume 2, 4, Back to the Future Part 2, 3, Spider-Man No Way Home, 2, Avengers End Game, and number 1, T2, Judgment Day. Chris Davis, number 5, The Bourne Ultimatum. People don't really talk about the Jason Bourne movies anymore, and I actually really liked that trilogy, and I didn't entirely hate the new Jason Bourne that came out a couple of years ago. That movie I felt was very safe, but I was happy to see Matt Damon back in that role. I like The Bourne Ultimatum. I like all 3 of those movies, personally. Number 4, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. 3, Aliens. 2, Return of the Jedi. And number 1, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Honorable mention for sequel done before a first film to be shown: Raise the Titanic, 1980 to Cameron's Titanic. He says, sorry, I couldn't help that one. And last but not least, my queen, Samantha Owens. Her honorable mention is Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest. And in no particular order, Captain America the Winter Soldier, Thor Ragnarok, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Spider-Man No Way Home, and Avengers End Game. That's going to do it for top 5 movie sequels. Thank you all for sending in your list. This was, as I mentioned at the beginning, probably the hardest list that I've ever had to put together, because there are so many great sequels, especially in more recent memory. We'll definitely have to do top 5 movie soundtracks and bring Jason, Wally, and Joey back on to do that. But you won't have to wait long for the next top 5 list, because next week I'll be doing top 5 movies from the 1980s, as voted on by the Patreon subscribers. And if you want to be a part of the awesome Patreon community we're building here on Feature Presentation, just head over to patreon.com/featureprezpod. And if you want to post your list, be on the lookout on Facebook, facebook.com/featureprezpod.